Hi, and welcome to Where's the Cat? A podcast series of short plays written and performed by members of the Wharf Writers Group. Each episode may make you smile, it may make you think, but it will certainly have you coming back for more. There's comedy, there's drama, and everything in between. Whatever your taste, there should be something for you to enjoy. Red Riding Hood by Steve Walters. Please note that this episode may contain strong language and themes of an adult nature.
I think it's time the truth was told. It all happened a long time ago, and there have been many versions of the story over the years. It's been told and retold by so many people, but only I and one other person know the real truth. I know the truth because it's my story. He knows it because, well, you'll see. I was young, a curious teenager. I don't mean curious strange, although that might well be true. I suspect most girls are curious strange at some point in their teenage years. No, curious as in wanting to know things, wanting to try things, wanting to discover new things. My parents used to say, "She has an inquiring mind, she'll go far." The neighbours would say, "She's just nosy, she'll get into trouble." And I would say to myself, I wonder what this does. Or, I wonder what would happen if... And at that age, I would try anything, at least once. That meant I opened a lot of doors I probably shouldn't have opened, looked in drawers I probably shouldn't have looked in, and read books I probably shouldn't have read. So, alone in the house, I was opening drawers and cupboards, and I opened this particular door, high inside the wardrobe, where secret things had been kept in the past. But what I found there this time surprised me a little. It really wasn't what I expected, but then I suppose I opened drawers exactly because I didn't know what to expect. But it was new. It hadn't been there a couple of days before, and because of that, I left it untouched. I didn't want to be found out, but I did remember it was there, ready to go. It wasn't just things I was curious about. There was language as well. I believed a girl should strive, struggle and endeavour to enrich further and enlarge her command of language. A word I found relatively recently was fuck. Again, it wasn't something I could use immediately. That would have been, "Where did you hear that? Who told you that? Don't you ever say that again," and so on. No, I kept it to myself, just rolled it around in my head, enjoying its monosyllabic brevity, and tried in its various forms, as an adjective, as a noun, as a simple expletive. Gave it a workout whenever I felt like shouting at something. I knew what it meant, of course. I knew what it meant in theory, but for a while I was just content to give it some mental exercise as an adjective. And the phrase that kept coming up was every fucking day. You will have heard about my grandma. I expect your image of her is the popular one, the one the storybooks put across. A white-haired old lady sitting up in bed, wearing a bonnet, waiting patiently for her granddaughter to bring her daily meal. Every fucking day. Well, the books got it wrong, I'm afraid. Probably for the sake of the children. She was a granny and she was old and there was a bonnet, but it was filthy, as unwashed as she was. And she wore it mostly to cover her baldness, but it also meant we didn't have to look at her warty old face all covered with wrinkles and whiskers, or the hairs growing out of her nose, or her toothless mouth which could only slurp at the broth I took her well, you get the idea, and spout the language she threw at me. I could have said to my mother, "That's where I got it from," except for the fact that Granny only ever swore when there was no one else there, so I wouldn't have been believed. Now, you've got the general picture. This is where the truth and the storybooks diverge, and I'd like to set the record straight before it's too late. So, here we go. That morning, when I was about to set out for Granny's cottage in the woods, I returned to the drawer and I got it out. I knew I could be back home and return it before anyone else came home. so where was the harm? And it felt kind of cool. Hey, I was a teenager. Off I trotted through the woods, the original picture of innocence. You've seen the illustrations in the books. Basket over my arm, the contents concealed from sight by a red and white check cloth, and me with my red cape wrapped round me and the hood up, because it was a little windy. I arrived at the cottage, knocked and went straight in as usual. Called out, "It's me, Granny!" But there was no answer. I could hear scrabbling behind the bedroom door, so I assumed she'd got out of bed for some reason. Even grannies have to use the chamber pot. It meant the room would probably stink when I went in. I gave her a couple of minutes to get back in bed and rearrange herself, and then opened the door. I have to say I never expected what I saw. Granny was on the floor, and standing over her, blood dripping from its jaws, was a wolf. I had to assume it was big and bad, but I had no real basis for comparison, it being the first wolf I'd seen. I remember we both kind of froze for a moment, the wolf and I, looking at each other. And then I reacted, pretty fast, even though I say it myself. I reached under the red and white check cloth and pulled it out. Now, I was unfamiliar then with handguns, as I was with wolves, but they're pretty simple. This one wasn't one of your dainty tuck-it-in-the-top-of-your-stocking lady gun, nor was it a dirty Harry, "D'you feel lucky, wolf? Well, do ya?" Magnum. It was a straightforward automatic with a simple safety and trigger. Safety off, point and squeeze. It may not have been large, but it was loud. 3 things happened almost simultaneously. The gun bucked in my hand, the wolf dropped, and the adrenaline, fuck! The adrenaline zapped me like nothing I'd ever experienced before. With a grin on my face, I looked at what I had done. The wolf looked pretty dead with a large hole in its head, and the bullet appeared to have gone straight through and into Granny and would have killed her as well, except she was already dead. Probably. Which was fortunate. But the adrenaline, I was pumped. So much so that I fired 2 more shots into the wolf just for the hell of it. Now, you'll be expecting the appearance of a woodsman around this stage, and I won't disappoint you. Even in the woods, the sound of 3 gunshots is bound to attract some attention. But once again, the books will have given you the wrong impression. You're expecting a large avuncular type with a full dark beard, wearing red plaid lumberjack shirt, open to the waist to reveal a white undershirt. On his head a knitted hat. Braces holding up the trousers, which are tucked into a pair of heavy lace-up boots. An axe in his hand, of course. You've seen the pictures. The kind of man who would immediately throw his jacket over the corpses and hustle me out of the cottage so I didn't have to worry my pretty little head about death. Then he would claim the wolf had killed Granny and he saved me by killing the wolf with his axe. At least that seems to be the story everyone has got hold of. Well, it wasn't like that. Yeah, there was a woodman. I could tell that from the axe in his hand. But he was probably only a couple of years older than me, and he was wearing a tight white t-shirt and Levi's, and he was hot. At this point, the adrenaline was still buzzing through my veins, and my new favourite word was running through my mind. I didn't even take the time to consider the options. I decided this was exactly the right time to find out what it meant in practice. As I said, I was curious. I still am. I'll try anything, at least once.
You have been listening to Red Riding Hood by Steve Walters. Red Riding Hood was played by Ali Warren. This series was recorded at Elm Grove Studios, Cairn, with editing and mixing at LG Studios, Hilperton. Production script by Paul Snook and read by Ian Diddams. Music, editing, sound design and production by Alex Brunsden. This has been a Where's the Cat production 2024 by the Wharf Writers Group. All copyrights are held by the authors. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and get notifications about new episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening.